Hi everyone, my name is Megan Bayles. I'm the second author on our presentation today titled Identifying the Scope of Activity Support Needs for Individuals Aging in Place with Disability. This study, which was done in collaboration between three colleges, the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Georgia Tech, and the University of Kansas, aimed to understand how we could adjust our first in-depth interview study for a new population of older adults with disabilities. In 2017, 35% of older adults 65 years or older were reported to have a disability, 22% having ambulatory difficulty, 14% having hearing difficulty, and 6% of vision difficulty. These were the first populations of interest for Access 1. ACCESS stands for Aging Concerns, Challenges, and Everyday Solution Strategies. As introduced, Access 1 was a large-scale mixed method study that set out to understand the support needs for older adults who are deaf, hard of hearing, low vision or blind, or had a mobility impairment. This study set out to not only examine the frequency, nature, and distribution of these barriers to everyday living activities that these older adults experience, but also to learn about our participants' response strategies. For example, do they use different technologies for coming up with their own method? For example, one of our participants from the vision group used different sized screws that he put into his medication bottle lids to know what bottles contained which medication. Now that this study has concluded, we intend to extend our participant populations and adapt our Access 1 study for a second round, which is Access 2. The new population focuses on late deafened older adults who make up the majority of the deaf community. We define this as hearing loss after language acquisition. We will also focus on older adults with macular degeneration, which is the leading cause of vision loss for those over 65, along with glaucoma, as the glaucoma population is mostly made up of older adults. Finally, 10% of people with MS are over the age of 65, and this will be our last focus group for Access 2. Before moving forward, we knew that with these new populations come unique needs that were different from our groups in Access 1. To be able to adapt our study properly and understand the participants' needs, we wanted to conduct a small interview study with subject matter experts to help us gain initial insights on these needs, identify a range of challenges pertinent to the different populations, and help us adjust our assessment tools and interview. When selecting our participants, we wanted them to hold one of our combination of positions relating to the Access 2 populations. This included relevant professionals, someone who may have had the disability, family members of those who had the disability, care partners, or advocates. Our SMEs were combinations of different target groups. We had 3 SME interviews for each group. The late deafened SMEs ranged from those with a PhD in communication sciences to gerontology. We also had an SME that holds a leadership role on a national organization for those who are late deafened. 2 of our SMEs for this group themselves were late deafened. The vision SMEs have professional experience in accessibility, optometry, and vision rehabilitation therapy. All of these SMEs have personal experience with vision loss. Lastly, we had the SMEs for the MS group, one having been diagnosed with MS who teaches functional exercise for persons with MS. Collectively, they also have degrees in kinesiology and rehabilitation science. The goal of the SME interviews were to determine participant requirements, define new activity categories, decide our accommodations, and discuss recruitment strategies. From the interviews, we were able to determine our eligibility requirements. For all 3 groups, we will need them to live in the United States, speak English fluently, have the disability for 10 years or more, and be 60 to 80 years old. The lower bound of 60, opposed to 65, was determined as the MS group has a bit of an earlier onset. Specifications for the late deaf group include having serious difficulty hearing, experienced hearing loss after language acquisition, the hearing loss is bilateral, and finally they need to use English as their primary language to communicate. The vision group requires serious difficulty seeing, having macular degeneration or glaucoma, and the vision loss is uncorrectable. The MS group is the final group, and they will just need to have been diagnosed with MS. After discussing eligibility criteria, we asked the SMEs to discuss our current activity list that we discussed with the participants, as well as let us know if some tasks were missing. This slide shows the Access 1 categories and activities discussed in the interview. We first wanted to readjust the activity categories, for example, renaming activities outside the home due to all the activities having the potential to take place outside of the home, and transportation, as it also came up in a few different categories. We wanted to limit each of these categories as well to 4 topics within the categories. The categories were adjusted to include social and interpersonal activities, household activities, leisure and recreation, productive activities, healthcare activities, and finally, basic daily activities. Following this, we were curious the categories that our SMEs would feel were the most difficult for each of the groups. For the late deafened group, it was safety, for example, not hearing alarms or not being able to call 911, transportation, like getting lost due to overhead announcements, and socializing. For the vision group, the SME suggested that having access to content, for example, healthcare information, may be the most difficult along with safety as well. And for the MS group, they felt transportation, managing health, and basic activities would be the most difficult. Through these interviews and Access 1 information, we were able to pull out cross-cutting themes. These were aspects that came up in most activity categories that we felt needed to be pulled out for Access 2 and asked about independently. These themes were safety and transportation. One of our questions for our subject matter experts was about accommodations and how we can meet participation needs and preferences for each of these individual groups. Some suggestions for accommodations included providing written information, video or face-to-face conversations, and technology assistance, like automatic speech recognition, for the late deafened group. For vision loss, they suggested large font on materials, letting participants know they can have assistance for forms, using alt text for images. They also suggest asking their preferred way to review documentation. The MS group suggestions were to limit the amount of time sitting or participating, as well as providing questionnaires ahead of time. Further, being flexible with appointments as they can have good or bad days. Lastly, we asked if they knew of places to recruit these populations. Ranging from national to local groups, we were able to get pretty big lists for possible organizations to contact. We are lucky that for Access 2, we'll actually be doing an online interview, which enables us to recruit from anywhere within the United States. Some places that were suggested were the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association, National Federation for the Blind, and National Multiple Sclerosis Society page. Through this process, I was really able to learn a lot about the importance of utilizing subject matter experts and understanding the late deafened population. I'll be taking lead on the late deafened population, and it's shown me the importance of learning about your populations before working with them. Further, it's provided me with valuable lessons on the importance of working with people who know your goal population and the valuable information we, as researchers, can learn from one another. Through this process, I was able to really learn a lot about the importance of utilizing SMEs and understanding the importance of working together as researchers to learn from one another. I will be taking point on working with the older adults who are late deafened, and interviewing SMEs was a great way to learn how to form relationships with this group. The SMEs also helped us to understand the importance of accommodations and how making the participants feel comfortable will allow a teamwork approach. Lastly, working with the SMEs reminds us that we are not experts at everything and should continue to seek interdisciplinary and inclusive perspectives. Thank you.